What's up, guys? Brady Fugel here, coming at you with another discography ranking. Today, I'm going to be ranking the albums from Daughtry in preparation for their upcoming, EP, Shock to the System Part 2, which I'll be reviewing this after it drops this Friday, along with Part 1 that dropped last year. I'll be combining both EPs into one review. Quick disclaimer, I'm a little under the weather, so if I seem a bit more low energy than usual, that's why. But even though Daughtry might not be the most relevant band nowadays, if we're being honest, they were a band that I kind of grew up on. I listened to a lot when I was younger, and I thought this would still be a fun discography ranking to do. Daughtry is definitely a band that falls pretty snugly into what you may call butt rock or divorced dad rock, which I can't help but crack up a little bit because I'm pretty sure that the first time I ever heard Daughtry's music was when my dad played it for me after my parents got divorced. So there's that. But as much as you could hate on this band, you can't deny that Chris Daughtry has one of the most recognizable voices in hard rock, at least for the last almost 20 years now. Like I said, their relevance has definitely gone way downhill since that debut album, but you can't deny that there's probably at least a solid 5, maybe 6 songs that even that people who don't know who Daughtry actually are have probably at least heard from the band before. So yeah, they're easy to hate on, but you can't deny their success. You can't deny just how they sound, mostly due to Chris Daughtry's voice. And I will have some positive things to say in this discography ranking. Even still, nowadays, despite, like I mentioned, the fact that I've kind of grown out of their style of hard rock. I had to close the blinds here because the sun was in my fucking face. But let's get right into it with my least favorite album by this band. And let me just say that as much as I want to give Daughtry benefit of the doubt, this album might be one of the worst albums I've ever talked about on this channel, and that is Cage to Rattle in 2018. Funny enough, I actually did a review on this album when it came out 7 years ago now, just over 7 years ago on a different channel. And even back then, when I preferred this general style of music a lot more than I do now, I still gave it like a really, really low score and bashed the shit out of it in that review. Now, Daughtry have always had somewhat of a mainstream pop radio appeal, even dating back to their first album, which pretty much is full-on hard rock. But this record just full-on amplifies and blows that up to the max, to the point where it is absolutely unlistenable for me. Even despite enjoying Chris's voice as a whole, I really, really hate this fucking album, if I'm being quite frank with you. There's not a single song that I like on here. I think the only compliment I can give it is that the song Bad Habits is pretty catchy. Aside from that, this record to me is soulless radio pop garbage that I absolutely never want to listen to again once in my life. The music on here, it's so shallow, it's so radio pandering. Even a track like Backbone, which tries to sound like it has a little bit of rock influence, it sounds like if Imagine Dragons tried to go for more of a rock sound on their music. Several songs like Gravity and Stuff of Legends and Just Found Heaven, they try to be dramatic and climactic and emotional, but just fall flat on their face. Even with the one song that I think is a little catchy, there is absolutely no reason to listen to this album. I like to wish that it didn't exist, if I'm being honest. And on a very similar level, I'm going to give the number 5 spot to Baptized in 2013, the album that Cage to Rattle followed up. Another record that I cannot fucking stand just because of how the band just, for some reason, felt the need to just dive headfirst into the depths, in the abyss of, again, just soulless radio pop that has absolutely zero nuance to it. Like, you listen to a song like Traitor, it literally sounds like the band is trying to be Maroon 5 2.0. Or fucking Battleships with the boom, 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 boom thing that Chris tries to do. It is so fucking cringy. There's also the hilarious irony of the song Long Live Rock and Roll, which is a sentiment that I can obviously get behind, but I don't know why that for this song with these lyrics, they decided to put them in this fucking country pop bullshit song. It's like this song just like spits in the face of the rock and roll genre. Like, the fact that they can use these lyrics in this song that has absolutely nothing to do with rock and roll and is part of a larger project that panders so fucking blatantly to being pretty much anything but rock and roll in order to get more fucking radio play. Sort of like Cage to Rattle, the only compliment I can give this album is that one of the songs, in this case the hit, Waiting for Superman, is a pretty catchy song, and unlike Bad Habits on Cage to Rattle, I do actually enjoy this song pretty much through and through. But that's it. I still fucking hate this album. On to the next one. So for this next spot, I'm going to give it to their most recent album, Dearly Beloved, in 2021. Still an album that I don't really enjoy, quite frankly, but it was at least nice to see them bring back some of their rock sound, which, to me, they should never have abandoned in the first place. I mean, Chris's voice is just so suited for their brand of hard rock that they established with their first 3 albums. And listening to a track like Cry for Help, which does kind of bring to mind those first few records where it's a bit more acoustic guitar driven and a bit more vocal centered without amplifying all these stupid fucking pop sound effects. But unfortunately, I find that the rest of the album falls into one of two groups, either pretty overproduced radio rock or octane radio rock, which is kind of when that sound started to become a thing. Daughtry very much fit that mold and went for that sound with this record, just in a way that a lot of these tracks aren't very riff focused and are more focused on just being catchy and having these big full choruses and having songs that kind of loop around to certain hooks, like Heavy as the Crown is a great instance of that. And there's still the pop-leaning stuff on here that I find almost just as insufferable as the first 2 records I talked about. I'm talking about tracks like Asylum, which in those kind of like bluesy undertones brings to mind again like Imagine Dragons in the worst way possible. Also, Call You Mine is a slower song that again just feels a bit too cheap and like they're trying to adapt modern pop influence into their music in a way that doesn't feel welcome. This record overall definitely isn't as abhorrent as the first 2 records that I just bashed heavily, but it's still not really an album that I would choose to listen to. I think the main reason that it gets some points here over the others is just that the band did kind of feel like they were retracing their steps in a positive manner, which is something that I at least can respect. In the number 3 spot, I'm giving to their third record, Break the Spell, in 2011. This overall is a record that I think is pretty solid. There are a few tracks on here that I find myself coming back to, but overall it doesn't feel quite as inspired, and it doesn't quite have the hooks and the appeal that the first 2 records do. It sounds a bit stale, which I guess means I can give them a little bit of credit for trying to shake things up with the next album, but they should have just probably taken like a hiatus or something instead of putting out that shit. But that being said, I mean, there is still some genuine good songwriting on here. Like the track Gone Too Soon, I think is actually great. It's this really touching crescendoing ballad type track where the lyrics talk about what sounds to me like having a miscarriage, which is obviously a very deep and personal topic to anybody who can relate to it. And the lyrics and the music do a great job of kind of backing up that sound and giving this track the emotional weight that it was written to carry. And there are several tracks on here where these lyrics that focus more on kind of missing a relationship and admitting your wrongdoings, where that emotion does really come out in the vocals especially, but also the music. I'm talking tracks like Crawling Back to You and Crazy and Break the Spell, the title track. Out of My Head, although I do think it's a little cringy nowadays, was a song that I loved back in the day. And it does still admittedly have some pretty catchy, just classic rock and roll influenced riffs and just the stomp that the song has and some of the lyrics. Start of Something Good is also a decent ballad that, again, definitely has that tenderness that complements the lyrics very well. But notice how every track that I've complimented so far is on the first half of the album. Once you get past Gone Too Soon, this record loses any and all memorability. This record is the definition of front-loaded. Louder Than Ever is this pretty weak, anthemic hard rock track. At least it tries to be, but it never quite gets there for me. It just sounds a bit wimpy. Same with the closing track, Spaceship, which is one of those kind of acoustic-driven, straight-ahead rockers that Daughtry has done a lot of, especially on the first 2 records. But again, it doesn't have the same hooks. It doesn't have the same emotion that any of those songs did, and as a result, falls a little bit flat. So overall, not a bad record by any means. Just one that I think is a little mid, and one that I really only return to at most half of, if even that. And just like that, we're at the top 2. and 2 records that even today I actually still enjoy listening to, which is saying something. The number 2 spot I'm going to give to the debut self-titled, aka the record with the hits on it. When I said earlier that there's probably at least 5 songs that even non-Daughtry fans or non-rock listeners would recognize, they're all on this record. I mean, It's Not Over, Home, Over You, Feels Like Tonight, What About Now? Like, those are all songs that even when I just say them, even if you're not really a Daughtry fan, which if you're not, I'm not really sure why you're watching this, but thanks. But you would recognize those songs regardless. They're songs you could play for somebody regardless of what music they listen to, and they would go, oh yeah, I've heard that before, that sounds familiar, and they have to get points for that. I mean, just the fact that these songs in this album was so successful. And quite frankly, I can understand why. The tracks on here are super fucking catchy, especially the ones I just mentioned. In particular, It's Not Over and Over You are still tracks that I very much enjoy listening to today just because of how fun they are and just how, again, infectious and catchy they are. That's what Daughtry really did well on these first 2 records, especially this first one. And quite frankly, the deep cuts are just as good. I mean, Used To and Gone, All These Lives too, also songs that despite maybe not being as successful, are still really catchy. You'll listen to them and they will get stuck in your head. There's the more straight ahead rock type tracks on here, like What I Want, which has a solo from Slash, which is a great song. There and Back Again too has that urgent sense to it that I still somewhat enjoy. There's again that kind of crescendoing ballad type track on here, Breakdown, which is a strong contender for my favorite song on here. It's actually some of the more well-known songs, like What About Now, and also Feels Like Tonight, that don't do a whole lot for me now just because they feel a bit sluggish to me, but that's probably just my musical tastes evolving, and I can't call these bad songs. And again, Chris's voice in particular, just it's so well-suited for this exact style of hard rock. So it's really, like I said, it's no wonder, given all these elements, that this album was so successful and is still so successful. But my personal favorite album by this band, and a record that I actually revisit somewhat frequently, is their second album, Leave This Town, in 2009, I believe it was. Yeah, it wasn't quite as successful as the debut. It still had a few hits, like No Surprise is a song that I know got a lot of radio play, also Life After You. And to me, this album, I should say, is just as good as the last one, stylistically, but it feels a lot more just weightless almost, and just, it's got this really lighthearted and wide open and free feeling to it that I find especially infectious. This is just a fun album, and I think that's what a lot of people fail to understand before they bash bands like Daughtry, who may not have a lot of nuance in their hard rock music, but they can write and record songs that are just fun to listen to and are catchy and get stuck in your head. Those things all matter, and those things make a good song, even if they aren't super technical or they have all these influences that maybe aren't as conventional, would be a good way to put it. If you don't believe me, just put on one of the songs on here, like What I Meant to Say or Supernatural, with which both of these tracks just have such fun bounces to it. Also, Ghost of Me, I got similar compliments for. No Surprise was one of the biggest hits on here, and again, super fucking catchy. It's got that knockout chorus, which gets even more climactic and full sounding when that kind of extension gets added on after the second one. You Don't Belong is a track on here that's a little bit more aggressive and was a good choice for an opener, in my opinion. Same with Every Time You Turn Around, a track that just, again, sounds so lively and has so much energy to it. And then there's the more tender, soft songs on here, which to me are this album's brightest moments. First, you have Open Up Your Eyes, which is this just heartbreaking song that has got to be based on a true story. I will admit the narrative might be a little bit difficult to follow at times, but to me it sounds like maybe the story of like an older couple living together their whole lives and passing away. Or maybe someone younger losing their parents who were a little bit older. Anything along those lines I think would be pretty fitting. Learn My Lesson is a song that has a lot of nice warm melodies. Also September, which is another big hit from this album. Again, just a knockout chorus and some great melodies. And then the last 2 tracks on here might be my 2 favorite songs this band has ever put out. First, you have the very country-informed acoustic ballad on your Tennessee Line, which is a song that I have referred to as the closest to country that I will ever listen to, and it really is. Between Chris's vocal cadences and that lighthearted acoustic guitar that drives the song, and then that kind of extended multi-instrument horn string section that closes out the song, that section is just absolutely gorgeous and is a great way to conclude the song. Kind of just sums up all the points that were made. And then there's Call Your Name, which has these twinkling pianos in the chorus that, again, just have some really, really beautiful melodies. And with this track, it actually ascends and crashes into this awesome guitar solo before the final chorus comes back in a way that's a lot more climactic and full-sounding. Don't sleep on this album. Really, the only track that doesn't do it for me now is actually the biggest hit on here, Life After You, because, again, it just feels a little bit sluggish to me. But aside from that, if you ask me, this record is full of lively, radiant hard rock that was really a staple of its time. And it's also a record that holds a lot of nostalgia for me personally for reasons that I've kind of already said. So that's all I have for you guys with this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're a fan of this band, be sure to leave your ranking in the comments, as well as hit the subscribe button to see my review of Part 1 and Part 2 of Shock to the System when Part 2 drops this Friday. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I will catch you guys later. Peace.